Okay, guys, it's suddenly January 21st. Welcome to Tinderbox Meetup with Michael Becker. I'm Mark Bernstein, the designer of Tinderbox. We meet weekly, alternating Saturdays and Sundays. We often have guest speakers, interesting special topics. If you'd like advanced announcements, subscribe to the Eastgate list at eastgate.com or on the Tinderbox homepage. We've got a calendar for meetups too, and we'll put the URL of that calendar in the chat. Meetups are announced and discussed in the wonderfully active Tinderbox forum, forum.eastgate.com. There's been really good discussion this week about Tinderbox workstations and how much screen real estate you want to have and what other great things you want to have. One of the invaluable things was so popular that it's now sold out at the manufacturer. So stop by and hit the forum and say hello. I believe 2 weeks from today, we have hypertext research legend Kathy Marshall, the inventor of spatial hypertext, who is going to be talking about a new digital humanities. So save that date. And now here's Michael Becker.
Hey, everybody. And when you say what date is Kathy Marshall, Mark?
I believe it is the first Sunday in February. There's still a little bit of ambiguity, but I believe it's February 4th.
All right, fabulous. Okay, so I put the calendar link in the note for anybody that wants to be involved in that. This is a calendar for the community. So if you have anything that you want to add to this, and it just doesn't have to be about our meetups. So for example, I hold a monthly session for my Patreon channel. So I put that on the calendar. Let's put other things on this calendar too that are relevant to the community. So for example, the annual Hypertext Conference, Mark Bernstein and Mark Anderson, if we can throw that out there too. So, or if we hear about or learn about any new book launches or kind of just any kind of thing that is event related relevant to this community, let's send it over to me or Mark Bernstein, and we will put it on the calendar. So that would be absolutely fantastic. As for me and everyone said, wow, new look. Yeah, so I'm actually in Mexico right now for a couple of weeks doing work down here. And so I was halfway down to walking down to the beach. That's why I was 4 minutes late for today's call. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's Tinderbox meetup time. I got to get back to my room. So I ran back up to the room. So as soon as this call's done, I'm going to be going down back to the beach. So how do our meetups work? So what we do is we go around the room. New people and new community members get to introduce themselves, or community members that haven't been around for a long time get to kind of talk to us about what they're doing. We then, if we have a theme, as Mark Bernstein talked about, we'll jump right into that theme and go through that for the next hour and a half or so. And then if not, we invariably will pick up on any individual's projects that people are working on. I agree with Mark Bernstein. We had a really good conversation about workspaces, like the physical and software environment that we use to be successful with Tinderbox. So we should drop that into the chat too for posterity's sake, because I think there's been some good elements there. I, for one, just to start with that kickoff, I've got the typical workstation environment is when I'm at home, it's the 49-inch LG monitor with the 37-inch monitor next to that, the 16-inch M2 laptop, plus the mouse that Brian Jenks had recommended a couple of weeks ago, the Logi M3 mouse is just absolutely amazing, with really great ergonomics with really good programmatic buttons. Plus, its power cord is actually on the front of the mouse, unlike the Magic Mouse, which is the power cord's on the bottom. So when the mouse actually runs out of power, you can continue to use it, which is a plus. But let's take a look at that. If anybody wants to comment on their workstation, that would be great. I also want to call out Malcom, if you don't mind, Malcom. You had a really good thread with several interconnected activities that you're going on and using with Tinderbox as you're doing your research on how do we actually have a survivable planet in 2050 with 10 billion people on it. So can you, if you don't mind me, if I can put you on the spot, maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. First of all, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yep, good.
Yep.
So I'm over in Scotland, and yeah, the research is pretty heavy, but perhaps more actually how I use Tinderbox and everything else. But so I've worked with European Environment Agency and European Commission and others on policy to do with environment and social issues and economics. And I suppose what I'm doing now, you can sum up is sort of how on earth can 10 billion people live well by 2050? That's a big project. And the key bits of software I use in that is Tinderbox for actually all of the ideas, but it's closely linked with Bookends, which is where all of the references go.
Sorry.
And then Scrivener for actually doing the writing. So that's like the triangle of my three things. And then slightly more peripheral to that, there's DEVONThink, which I used index files from Bookends. All of the files are actually stored in a Bookends folder. So I use indexing in DEVONthink to actually do AI type searches on things. And I was saying in my email that I've been doing this for 30 years and there are about 20,000 references, and you find using the AI, you're uncovering things you read sort of 15 years ago and you've got no idea it's actually connected. So my footprints are sort of recrossing each other over 30 years. So that's DEVONthink, and then I'll sort of then export it out from Scrivener if I have to Mattel or Word or wherever I need to actually finish the text in. The two particular things I'm got a particular interested in knowing more on with Tinderbox, although not necessarily in this meeting, is I use the reference prototype. I use it in quite an unusual way, though, because I'm doing all my bibliographic stuff from Bookends into Scrivener. So what I actually use the reference prototype for is just to drop in notes from Bookends, and I've got it so that I've eventually worked out that to have a heading on your little note, that's what's actually in the Bookends citation format that you see. Obviously, it's using RIS to actually get information actually into a Tinderbox. And then, well, what I should have said in Bookends, when you use there's a particular reference format, I actually use that. I just use two things. I use my take-home message and the abstract from the paper, and that's what appears in the main body of text of the Tinderbox note. And then I fiddled around. Oh, on the top, I just need a very abbreviated name of the first author, the date, and then the title. So I basically set it up so it's a minimum amount of information. The thing that's really revolutionized my life in the last year is having hot links to individual bits of text in a PDF. And so I use that, dragging that over to Tinderbox from Bookends. And that really does make a huge difference. So that's it in a nutshell. I said I was interested in the reference prototype. The other sort of interest I've got is I can remember when I first started this back in 2017 with Tinderbox, just finding some things of the interface just not working as expecting, and sort of just wondering where on earth your notes have disappeared to when you try and go back to them. So I'm quite interested in those, what we can do to actually help people who are very early on starting, the sort of things that are not quite as you'd expect, because I've had experience of other people I've introduced to Tinderbox, and I can see that's a bit of a hurdle for them. So that's like the two things, the reference prototype and experience with using Tinderbox in the first few days, how you keep people on board. That's it.
Hey, and would you mind kind of showing us your
I can. By all means, people protest, but yes. So, okay. So this is starting with Tinderbox.
and
Okay.
go ahead. Hey, Mark Anderson, I want to make you the co-host in case they drop out again.
So
that way you have control.
yeah, is the screen resolution okay for people? Can you actually see? I'm not going into any great detail, but basically it's at the top. How on earth can 10 billion people live well? Then there's
I can't see it. Are
I
you
don't see
sharing
it on the
yet?
screen yet.
You're not? Okay, hold on. I'll just share. Right. How's that?
There you go.
Yeah, I can see that.
Good. So, so this is the overarching bit in Tinderbox. Basically goes, how on earth can 10 billion people live well? A bit about the challenge. And really, you start off here. It's one of the trends you've got to bend, sort of physical and social. Then there's ways of actually how you might bend those trends. But nothing's going to happen very much unless you get into politics, and policy. So that's what this is about. But even if you know what the problems are, what you might do to change them, and how to discuss the politics, still not very much is going to change because people have got very different ways of seeing things and ways of being. So you need to get into those sorts of issues. Finally, you need to get into action, which is actually what on earth you're going to do about that. Action is where I'm working at the moment. If I take you to a section that's pretty live at the moment. So strategy to change the world. Come on, there we go. Strategic ways. Learning from other strategic ways, military, political, and strategic games. Political strategy of all types. You get into the specifics. And then there are business, what can we learn from business strategies? And if I go to ethical businesses here, Quaker capitalism is an area I'm very interested in. And then here we're getting into the detail of just what the end goal is of the Quakers, grand strategy, tactics, and all those sorts of things. So that's Tinderbox. Here, I have references dragged in from Bookends. And you'll see there, if I click on that, you can see that I've got the main thing I need in Tinderbox for my Bookends references is I need to be able to get back to that reference. So here we are, that's now in Bookends, which you may or may not be familiar with. And you can see how I've messed around with the reference prototype, because all I need is, as I was saying, that link. And then what I pull over from Bookends is, if I just go, let me just go to one where I've actually changed. So, well, let me just give you a demonstration of what happens if I do it. So Bookends. So I want to copy this reference over into Tinderbox. I'm just going to turn off this Stage Manager. Right, so and as you know, it's Option Command, drag this in. Oh, actually, I want, is it gone? Oh, that's interesting, because I actually want Bookends. Oh, that's interesting. I just changed the title of that. What I use is I've got a copy of the reference prototype because I don't want to mess with that. What they should be doing is now changing it to what you can see in these, but that's the nub of it. So I'm actually using Bookends in a very different way. And usually the text what I get up here is the take-home points of that paper and then the abstract. And that's it. So I'm not interested in using it to create a bibliography in Tinderbox. And then when I'm writing, so here we are in Scrivener. This is this bit about Quaker capitalists. You can see here, I've got a link back to Tinderbox. That will take me back to Quaker capitalists. And then the other thing you can do is you can drop in your references to Bookends. There's that particular reference. And going back to here, you can actually, of course, also look at in Bookends, you can actually see the actual PDF, but that's not how I do it. I do all of when I need to look at a document, I always go back to Bookends and work through there, and that's where all my annotations and everything else go. When I'm reading a paper or for the first time, I'll put generic comments about a paper into Bookends, and then when I want to actually drag a reference across to Tinderbox, that's where I'll make specific comments about a paper that are germane to what I'm actually doing at that particular time. And that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, so a couple questions, procedural questions for me. So can you go back to when you were dragging that note from Bookends to Tinderbox?
Yes.
And what about that wasn't working for you just now?
All right. Okay, so that's a change. Let me just go back to prototypes.
So let's debug that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So let me explain. So if I just go to prototypes, bookends reference. So that, here we go. So that is based on the reference prototype. But as you saw, I've messed around and cut out a lot of the information.
Okay.
If I go to the inspector for that, so you'll recognize that bit of code probably. I just nicked that off the website with a minor modification. Before I came on air, I just tested that that was actually working, and that is actually now putting it's because I've made it a prototype probably, or it stopped being a prototype. I wonder.
So I can tell you exactly what I think's happening just now, if you want.
Okay. Yes,
So
please.
if you go back to the prototype window.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are very few what I'll call hard constraints in Tinderbox. Map view versus outline view, and the way you manage containers is one of them. We talked about that last week. This is one of the other what I'll call a hard constraint, which I've come across.
Right.
And when you're dragging file over from, say, Bookends or Zotero into Tinderbox, Tinderbox is going to look for a prototype called references.
Right.
And so you have one called references.
Yeah.
And so if you want Tinderbox to take on your Bookends prototype, do me a favor and let's just see if it works. Change the references and name it references 2.
Okay.
And now name the Bookends one references.
Okay. So this reference here, that's the
default come out. That's the one marked for us as part of the default. So name that one references 2.
Okay, I'll just drag it out from underneath you.
No, yeah. So just name that references 2, and for your Bookends one, call it references.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, because that's what Tinderbox is looking for.
Yeah.
Now, when you drag it in,
call it if it's supposed to be reference, don't call it references because it's name.
Oh, reference. It should be reference.
It's reference. Yeah, right.
Okay. Now, when you drag it off, Tinderbox is going to see, that's my reference prototype.
Okay, so let's just try that. So Bookends, here we go. Control option. One day somebody will have to tell me why it is control option.
Well, Mr.
That's Bookends choice, but it's because drags do different things. And this is saying, no, I want you to drag an enhanced bit of information from Bookends. I don't know what the default is, but
and there you go. And I suspect what's happening now is
this is okay. Yeah.
Right. And then you've got that name issue that we could work on if you want.
This should have sorted it. Here we go. That's sorted. That's an example of something. If you're a novice to that sort of, I know what's going on there. The edit takes a while for it to actually happen. But unless you're actually pre-warned to that, you think, bloody hell, what the hell's going on? And then there's the business of turning off the edict in the prototype, which I know I found it explained very well in one of the forum posts, but unless you're aware of that, because it's such a basic thing for somebody to be doing, I suspect, out of the box, they want to use a bibliographic software and Tinderbox. So I'd be very willing to try and help actually put together some very simple clusters of documents that people can experiment with, just so they can get up and running really quickly with it doing what they expect it to do. You can see here, by the way, this is now what that is meant to do. I've got here is just pulling across takeaways, which is my short couple of sentences about something, and then here, then you've got. There's actually a lot of notes in that one. Then below it, you'll actually have you should have the abstract.
Okay. And if you don't mind, Malcolm, if we can just play around with this a little bit while we're doing this, because I think this is a really valuable exercise today. So first,
just let me do a save first and a save as.
So can you click on the just so people can see what's going on here? Can you click on the little spreadsheet looking icon to the right, the displayed attributes icon? So let's go over to the right. Go over to the right, top of your note.
That one?
Yeah. And go ahead and type RIS for me.
Yeah.
And then pull out there and click on the reference RIS.
Yep.
Okay. So and then if you click away, just so we can see it. Okay. So and while you're at it, if you can just click in there for me into the reference RIS, copy everything that's in there. And then create, and then just for the sake of visualization, just double click in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, do a Control A to copy everything, and then hit Control. and then Control C to copy it. And then why don't you just click over and copy and create a new note real quick.
Yeah.
Just call it test and then paste that into the text. So just so what people can see what's happening is, what Tinderbox is looking for is, no, you copy the text, not the RAS content.
Something happened there.
Yeah.
Right,
That just hit Control Command A while you're got that selected.
There we go.
Right. So what Tinderbox is looking when you're coming over from a reference manager, the reference manager has will have tagged its content with these different elements. So TY is the type of the article, AU is the author name, and every reference manager has the ability to kind of program this how you want. I use Zotero. Malcom uses Bookends, as does many others. And so what we're doing with the parsing is you can have Tinderbox go and look for these patterns and parse out what you want to be populating into various attributes. And so when you look at, for example, in my video, when I've done this, I've actually have a fairly extensive series of streaming action code that I use to parse all this out and place that information in where I want. So Malcom, if you don't mind, click on the turnball icon and hit Command 1 again.
Yep.
The note and then hit Command 1 and then go to the edict.
Yep.
Okay. And so if we can expand that up, what you're seeing there is, make the name equal to the author's .@0. So that's saying grab me and so what that action code is saying is make the name of this note equal to the first item in the list that is in the author's list. So if there were multiple authors in this particular report, it was said Turnbull, semicolon, Becker, semicolon, Anderson, semicolon, Bernstein. Let's say there were those 4 authors. What that code is saying is just grab me the first one and make that the note. And then for those that are looking at it, and then what I want you to do is to do a plus and then make the publication year, which is the PY element. If you go back to the test 2, that's the PY. Click on test 2. That's where it says PY.
That fourth line down, yeah.
Fourth line down, PY-2024. So that little bit of action code there is then saying, and you have stripped out the publication year and now make that also part of the name.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just a great example of how you're using action code to have Tinderbox automatically reconstruct how you want this note to appear. And again, I've got another, maybe we can find it on the forum. I've got another video that kind of deconstructs how I've created my own version of this reference element.
You can take that a bit further in that in fact, the fact that in the code there that the code is taking publication year means that Tinderbox has already looked at that payload of information, which comes across unseen in the drag. So in this modified drag, because Malcolm's asking, well, why do I have to press these extra keys? Because part of it is this whole of extra stuff is coming along unseen in, you might think you're just dragging a label, or you might be dragging the abstract or something. All this other information comes across and it's all available in the reference RAS. So publication year, the PY field, is automatically parsed for you into publication year. But there might be another field you want now, or you might have added something extra, plus the fact that you can actually set up bookends to actually provide different information. So, I mean, on the bookends end, you can also do all sorts of other further customization. But the point is, just because it doesn't turn up automatically in a field, if it's there in the RAS, you can still go past it. We can.
And what you mean when you're saying because it doesn't turn up, Mark?
You can pull out a lot more information, or it might just be that you wanted to. You might just say, okay, for instance, you might just like drag my abstract or my notes, and what I then want you to do with it is I want you to parse that out into a set of notes that are child of the reference or something. So all these sort of things are possible. I won't dive into the rabbit holes of it now, but again, this to me is part of the really interesting thing of using these tools in collaboration with one another, because all of us are looking for the magic button that just please do my homework, click here, because that's what we really want to do. But actually, turns out that doesn't that fits across the piece badly. But we normally know in most cases what we want to do. And the great thing is that in most cases, certainly Tinderbox in collaboration with other tools can do that, and therefore can put the information we want in the sort of granularity we want. So it might be an attribute, it might be in another note, it might be in a note somewhere else. And we can do that, which means that once it's set up, it's normally a little bit of work to set up, or you might have to come and ask someone in the forum, but that's fine. We can get an answer, you put that in place, and once you've done that, then it's just rinse and repeat. You just use again and again.
Can I just add something to that, which is the practical side of doing this? I could imagine sort of angsting a long time about what was actually in that, the title. So you might want et al. Or it to somehow know there's a single person or so on. In the end, I just went for a straightforward dash to remind me there could be extra information there. And I'm trying to make the title as short as possible because space is precious. All that's doing is giving me a memory of what that reference is, and I can always go back very quickly to Bookends to find out more about it in sort of 10 years' time, hopefully. I've got one other question about, if I may, about the reference prototype, which is, apart from the more usual references like books and journal articles, I'm putting in lots of newspapers and other things. And with newspapers, you've got the newspaper title, you've got the section of the newspaper, you've got a strap line, and you've got a summary as well. Those fields are all working in the RIS format. I can see them going in, but they get rather garbled. So it's actually, I think it's the newspaper section that actually goes into the title. And I'm just curious about whether that reference prototype has the entire set of RIS codes, or whether it's a subset. And in that case, is it possible to actually work on that and put in the RIS codes for newspaper articles?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, that there's obviously at some point a decision has to be made. Mark will probably, as I'm doing this, will be checking behind the scenes. But in essence, when it comes in, you have to make a pragmatic choice as to what's there. And don't forget that as it arrives, it starts out as something in a journal, or it starts something as a newspaper type reference to the Bookends end. By the time it arrives, the drag finishes in Tinderbox. It's just a body of RAS data that's there. Tinderbox will parse that, and it will have a default set. I don't think it necessarily takes everything that's in the RAS, which is one of the reasons it's stored for you.
Yeah.
But don't worry. Well, and again, one of the reasons it's stores that for you is if you don't get by default what you want in terms of stuff going into either into the text of the note or the title of the note, or indeed into various attributes, the RAS is there and you can go and do with that. So this is where the sort of so-called stream parsing tools are really useful, because basically they're really good at saying, look, go look at this body of formatted text, go and find the line that starts with this, go find its value, then put it in this field. So and again, we can sort of do that in detail in the forum or something, but absolutely. So don't worry if you're seeing it there in the reference RAS and you're not seeing it in the note automatically. Yeah. What that probably says is you probably just want to add a little bit of sugar of your own in terms of an edict or something to do this, because in a, you know, references, like names, it should be simple, right? But it's not. Yeah. So there are different, you know, across the piece there are different things that we want. Plus the fact that you might, for instance, for perfectly good reason, person A might want this particular field from the source to go into a different attribute as opposed to person B. So Tinderbox is making a pretty good estimation, I think, of the things you might want first cut. It's also saving other stuff that you might want without having to go back and redo the whole thing. And that's what the reference RAS is. So you can write code to say, right, go look at the reference RAS for this, and then take this information and write it either into this note or into another note's attribute of this name. Or if you want, you can also, because I think the default at the Bookends end is RAS. I actually use it for bringing BibTeX. So you can actually, I mean, the thing is, Bookends certainly is wonderfully Baroque. Once you lift the hood, you can change just about anything. Which is really cool, because once you know what you want, you can really customize it. So in essence, you could change it so that the RAS fields it brings across aren't necessarily the default ones.
Right. I thought that RIS was actually the default for Tinderbox rather than Bookends. I can see that BibTeX.
No. what Tinderbox gets as reference RAS is actually what Bookends puts on. This is confusing. So if Bookends puts information into what is by default normally, so at Bookends default, Tinderbox default, reference RAS gets RAS, which is one of the oldest interchange formats there is. And it is, you know, the problem is there isn't a standard interchange formats for who'd have thought for citations, but there isn't. There's that and BibTeX, and BibTeX has problems of its own because it, well, let's not get down that rabbit hole, but those are the two things. RAS is the simplest and the basic one. The thing is, if you wanted different fields in the RAS, you could customize your bookends so that the reference RAS field that you see in Tinderbox actually had more or different fields in it.
Yeah.
So and then you could, for instance, write custom code in Tinderbox at the Tinderbox end to pull it out. I don't know if I'm going too far here, but all I'm saying is that there is a limit to what the default can guess, because it's got to work across the piece. It broadly does, I think, for most people, a reasonable job. Once you know what you want and you realize it may not be there in the first place, it is easy by customizing either Tinderbox or Bookends or both to make sure that the appropriate information you want, first of all, comes from from Bookends into Tinderbox, and then is extracted from that into the field you want. I say Bookends, other reference managers are available, so you know, don't take that too literally.
Thanks very much for that. I just let other people get on, because I'm sure there are other people wanting to raise things.
Well, Malcolm, if you don't mind, let's keep with that a little bit. If you don't mind sharing your screen again, I want to.
All right. Okay.
So the other thing I wanted to, so the comment that you made about the whole newspaper thing and all of that, as Mark Anderson was just talking about, you could, and we don't have to do this now, but you could, when you're looking at the RES, you could see, you know, click on the test real quick.
Yep.
And it will tell you like TY book. So my guess is that if it's a newspaper, it would be saying TY.
Let me get a newspaper in, a newspaper article.
Let's see what it does.
Because
and this should actually be, if we want to play with it, we can do it really quick. And then you raised another point that I think was helpful for somebody else to be aware, for us to be bringing up. Okay. Then if you click away and then go back to the note, by clicking away and going back to the note, that tells Tinderbox that this note is now the focus, and it will trigger its edict and action code.
No.
Okay. Now let's look at the RAS.
No, remember here we need to add in.
You can add it in as a displayed attribute, or do this. Click Command 1.
Click Command 1. Okay, Command 1.
This is a neat little trick that Mr. Anderson taught me years ago. Click on the number 4 or whatever that is icon.
This one?
No, the one that says 4. The one to the left of it.
Ah, right, that's a 4. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Click Quick Stamp.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, and now in there type reference RAS.
Okay, whereabouts?
In the search box.
All right, yep.
So this part of the inspector is a really great way to get to a value of the attribute of a note that's not being necessarily, look up the reference RAS.
All right.
So start typing reference.
Oh, I understand. Yeah.
And then pop-up list, if you tip, when you click tab, it should pick that up for you.
Right. Okay. And so now you can now see the first line of the values that are in where it says TY news.
Yep.
Okay. That's if you click on that and copy all of it, that will give you everything that's in the RAS field. But if you just want, but that's telling you what's the first.
No, that's just coming in with the first line. So I select all, copy. Ah, right, there we go. So that's what that had. Remember this, actually, this is correct. So T1 is the title. I'm looking for where T2 is there. Or perhaps there wasn't a section in that one. So what I saw was the actual what was coming across from Bookends was correct. If there was a T2 there, if there was a section title in the newspaper, that would be T2. But that was getting... I'm hesitating because I'm actually looking and I can see it's not got a space in the title. It actually has got the title Bitcoin Splits.
Okay.
Perhaps
I think what you're echoing is a slight,
Yeah.
there's a slight sort of thing that when you do it, you think, well, if I tinker with it, they're going to break everything. So, you take something, have a look. Do you get what you expected? You know what's coming across from Bookends. And if there's stuff from Bookends that you know you want and you know where it should go, then you know you can fix it at the Tinderbox end. If it didn't come from Bookends, you can go back to Bookends and say, hey, wait a minute. Right, I need to fix my RAS export filter, which you can do. And you can make it have a different set of fields, fewer, more different fields from RAS. And that becomes the payload that comes across when you do the drag. So in the ideal world, everything would be the same and we wouldn't have to worry about these things. But the more you get into a research or the more you get into a grain of a field or something, okay, fine, this is the stuff I want. This is the pertinent thing. And now what I need to do is I need to customize one or both applications. So the information I draw across is brought in and lo and behold, then I magically end up with exactly the stuff I want in the place that I want it, if that helps.
And I saw Michael's video on doing stuff with Zotero, and I was sort of thinking I'd go back and have a look at that and see whether I could pick up what I needed for that. I actually did a bodge. What I actually did is I made a copy of the wrist thing and I started changing it, hacking it about so the right fields were appearing in the right places in Bookends, and that got me on my way. I was almost going to reply to somebody on the forum saying we could do that, but I then thought releasing that into the wild where somebody started actually hacking around with the risks and changing things, they were going to get into all sorts of problems later on. So I decided to demur from doing that and keep it to myself. But I've got a solution that works for me.
Yeah, but that's part of the community thing too. So, if you publish that into the forum, you just say, hey, everybody, this works for me. It may work for you.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
And all my videos really, honestly, are just me sharing with the world. This is what's working for me. You do with what works for you. Hey, go back to your file, Malcolm. I want to show something.
Sorry. Okay, hold on. Yeah, so
the whole point that I was trying to bring up here, and we don't necessarily need to do this now, but you see how it said TY News?
Yeah.
And before it said TY Book?
Yeah.
We could add to your edict that says, split at TY, and if it says news, add a badge of a little newspaper or add a flag of something. So you can actually give yourself the visual representation of a book or a newspaper if you wanted to.
Yeah, I could see that in principle because there are going to be issues with other formats. I was thinking I was going to be going down a rabbit hole here. And as I had something that was working, but I could see for other people that'd be quite an important thing to do. I would quite enjoy if there was ever a session to actually going under the hood with the reference prototype. I would certainly be interested in watching that and learning.
Well, we can actually do that for sure. And the other thing too is let's be honest, going under the hood of the reference prototype in some respects doesn't, that kind of misses the point. There is nothing special about the reference prototype. A prototype is a prototype. And all a prototype is doing is it's creating I don't want to use the word template, but I will. It's creating a set of a specialization for think about it like a node is like a stem cell. And a prototype is like the specialization of a stem cell. Make this heart cell, make this a liver cell, make this a lung cell. So when you're bringing it over, you're saying, when I have something that I want to be labeled as reference, specializing in the field of being a reference, apply this prototype to it. And what that says is, give it these displayed attributes, give it this color, apply this action code, apply these on ads, apply these on removes, apply these on visits. It's just telling Tinderbox what you want that class of, we'll call it a class rather than a template. What we want the class of notes that are getting the applied prototype of reference to actually do. And so there's nothing special necessarily about the
Right.
reference prototype or any other prototype. And you can go and change. And if you're looking at that note right now, the Turnbull note, click on it real quick.
Yep.
If you right mouse click where it says reference on the bottom right,
Yep.
you can now select from, no, right mouse click on that. Oh, we can't see it. Okay, you can now
You
by
need
right
the
mouse
reference
clicking
to?
right there, you
That
can
was-
actually select and apply a different prototype to that note.
Yep.
Right. At which point then that note now takes on all the properties of that new prototype
Mhm.
and all the inherited action code and stuff that you want it to do. And
What I
so,
was expecting it to do was to show the original, the complete information set there, but I see that's not actually happened.
well, now what you could do now, well, here's why.
Yep.
This is a
Yep.
really great conversation. The reason why is
Yep.
your note had broken. So there's this concept called inheritance when it comes to prototypes.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And so when you started specializing that note,
I get you. Yes.
my displayed attributes are different than my prototypes.
Yep. Yep.
So go back to the green Turnbull note now.
Yep.
And if you click on the little, there's a couple ways to do this. One of the fastest ways to do this is click on the spreadsheet icon on the right, the displayed
Yep.
attribute icon. And if you click the reset button there in the bottom left,
All right. Yep.
that
I get
resets the
Yep,
inheritance
yep.
of these displayed attributes
Yep.
to your prototype.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. The other way to go about doing that is if you hit Command-1, go back to the quick stamp. And now if you click, instead of saying reference RAS, type displayed attributes. Okay.
Yep.
And now you'll see on the right, it says inherited from reference. Now, if you click on the RAM one,
Oh,
the
yeah.
yellow,
Yep.
click on the yellow note, the RAM note
The which note?
behind the RAM note behind the just the yellow note right there, RAM.
All right. Yeah, I'll get you. Yep. Yep. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and that one's still referenced. Okay, click on that. Okay, modify. So you'll notice then at some point when you modify. Okay, go ahead and change the displayed attributes of that RAM note. Go to the displayed attributes button on the top right. No, on the top right.
Oh, yeah.
And add anything there you want. My string, whatever.
Okay.
File's fine.
Yeah. With our
So now if you go back to the inspector, click away.
Okay.
Just click away into the text. There you go. And now click on the main screen and then click the RAM note again.
Yep.
And then sometimes you need to hit Command-1 just to refresh the inspector.
Oops.
Okay.
Yep.
Now you'll see it says assigned to this note, not inherited from.
Yep, I see. Yes. Yep. Yep.
Right. And so that's Tinderbox telling you I've broken the inheritance to my prototype. I'm unique now.
Yep. I get that. Yep. Yeah, so in other words, if it's not working as you expect, that's the place to go and start poking around to see what's going on.
Right. And invariably, if something's not working as you expect, that happens, by the way, too, with rules or edicts as well. So if you've built a bunch of action code and you're like, why is this note not working? Why is all that action code I wrote in my prototype not working on this note? That's probably because at some point along the way, you manually edited the edict or the rule on that note, broke its inheritance to the prototype. And that's what's causing the problem and why your new action code is not running.
Yeah. That's good. Thanks.
Okay. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you, if you go back to the Turnbull.
Yes.
Note.
Hold on. Is this one? Yeah.
Yeah. And go ahead and close that out, the inspector. Now, the other thing, I do this all the time. If you don't mind, click on the displayed attributes icon again. And do an on add. So type on and then add. I don't know if you've ever done this before.
No, I haven't. On add.
Yeah. So the word on and then you'll see, and then ADD, capital A. There you go. Okay. So, and then, and just so we can say, now click away into the text. You're good.
Yep.
To make that go away, click away into the text.
Oh, I'm with you. Yeah.
Okay. So now, and if you hit the Command-1 button again, and click on the Death Star on the far right.
This one?
Yep. Okay, so the action, but the little action window right there, tab right there is the same thing as the value of that on ad.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the same. That's the both ways to be able to get to that. And
Right.
what I want to do here is I want to show you something.
Yeah.
Do you have another prototype you have like called P Note or something like that?
Nope.
All right, go to your prototypes. Go to your prototypes real quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, and why don't you type just double click in anywhere in there.
Yeah. Hold on, just make myself a bit more space. Right.
All right, and type P and then lowercase p and then notes. Capital N.
Okay.
Okay. And kind of the convention, just so everyone's listening to this, and we've been through this before, but it's really helpful. The convention is, and when we say convention, it's kind of like the you can come up with any terminology you want. But let's say if you had another note in your files called notes, how is Tinderbox going to know the difference between that notes file and your prototype notes file? It won't. So if you were to by putting a lowercase p in front of your prototypes, that's a convention you can always use.
Yep.
That my notes with a P in front of them are always my prototype. Right now, I don't do that with references because Tinderbox is looking for a prototype specifically named reference. But any other manually generated prototype, I always put a P in front of it. Okay. Now go ahead and in the displayed attributes button, pop that up and type in the word I don't know, like what turn, and maybe like author or tag. And then one other one, I want you to say publication year.
All one word?
Yeah, it's right there.
I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then tag. Hit the enter key.
Yep.
And tag. And again, all of this is customizable. You can generate any or tags. That's fine.
Yep.
Any of your own username and attributes, etc. you want. Now go back to that turnball note that we were looking. It's authors, not author.
All right. Okay.
Leave it as author. That's fine.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, leave it there. That's fine. Now go back to the turnball note.
Okay.
Okay. Now there's two places you can write this on ad code. You can write it right into the on ad attribute if you want, or if you hit Command 1, which might make it a little easier. And then in the action code, right in there in that text, in that white text window, start typing this. Say $ publication year.
Oops. Yep.
Okay, equals, 1 equals, not 2. $ publication year, parenthesis parent, lowercase.
Parentheses.
Parent.
Okay.
Yep. Parenthesis, semicolon. Now, if you hit, and then if you hit the enter key and say $ prototype equals, and then quote, and then select your P note prototype or just type it.
Yep.
And you want to put it in quotes.
Oh, in quotes. Okay.
Yeah.
Double quotes or single quotes?
Double quotes. Okay. And then a semicolon. Okay. And then just for fun, just so I can see what's happening visually, say hit the enter key then and say $ color. No, $ color equals red in quotes.
Oops. Should that be a capital R?
No, and they want the R all in quotes.
I will get you. Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now watch what's going to happen here. And sometimes it's easier to look at this activity if you're in outline view.
Okay.
So stop real quick. If you right mouse click on the tab,
hold on.
I wanted to show you something. That's fine. Where it said, where you see the little blue tab where you've got, where it says outline short versus long
Uh,
on the top right.
oh, this no, top right outline. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
us. If
Yeah,
you right
okay.
mouse click on that tab,
Okay, just need to shrink this down a bit. I'm losing you under Zoom. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
if you right mouse click on that tab,
Right mouse click on it. Yep.
yeah. Nope, you're not. Yeah, there you go. Right mouse click there.
Yep.
That should give you the list of the views, so you don't actually have to be
Yeah,
showing the
I'm
view
with
menu.
you. Yep. Yep. What do you want me to go on to?
No, I just wanted you to see the outline.
Oh, I see.
Rather than having to have that, rather
Yeah.
like I don't use that menu item along the top. I save myself that line of screen
Yeah.
because I know I can right mouse click on a tab.
Yep.
And I don't think anybody else can see you right mouse clicking on that. So maybe you can right mouse click and hold it.
All right. Hold on. That's a two-finger tap for me, by the way.
Or a two-finger tap or whatever it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're not seeing it, but just so people are knowing, the menu displays pop up when you click on that tab. Now, if you can open up the turnball note a little bit more.
Make it bigger, do you mean?
No,
I understand. Yeah.
And the turnball note's the one third from the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. Now what I want you to do is down where you see it says Role of Quaker Faith.
Yeah.
In your text.
Yeah.
Put a space in front of that hashtag.
Yeah.
No. I'm sorry, on the other side of the hashtag.
Okay. On the other side.
Hashtag space role. This is where you might want to modify the way you're taking notes, and I'll show you this in a minute. So, and then you scroll down to the next one where it says Quaker, the next hashtag.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. And then you have one above that too.
Yep.
Okay, and scroll down, keep going.
That's coming from Bookends, by the way. That's its symbol for putting making a heading on a note in Bookends.
Okay, but I'm wondering if there's a way in Bookends to have it force a space. So I'll show you this in a minute. Go down again.
There is.
Okay, go down again.
Yeah.
Are they all the way at the bottom?
Yeah. Okay.
One of them. Okay. All right. So now what I want you to do is go to the view, go to the note.
Yep.
Note menu. Sorry, the note menu.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm on it.
All right. We can't actually see the drop down for whatever reason.
It's there. Okay.
And click explode note.
Okay.
Okay. Now where it says break at the delimiter, click that. Okay. And now where it says whoops,
I shouldn't have done that. Okay, I was a bit anticipating. Sorry, hold on.
Okay.
So note, explode.
Okay. Yeah. Click at that. No. Click at the delimiter. Now where it says /n. The n, for those that are not aware of this, top right, /n means line break.
All right.
So delete that and put hashtag space.
Okay. I understand where we're going with this. Yeah.
Okay. Space. Okay.
Yeah.
Now hit explode.
Yeah.
All right. Now, if you look on the right on your turnball note, we can't actually see it.
Yeah. So what did I do wrong there?
That should have exploded your note.
Yes, I got where we were going with it. Let's just try that again. So note, explode. We've got break at delimiter. I've got hash space.
Yeah. You should get 7 notes. It's telling you at the bottom of the dialogue. It's going to give you 7 notes.
Explode.
And look at the outline. You should now see that.
Right. Yeah.
If you expand that.
There it is. It just got cut off the screen. Okay. Yeah. Now you've seen we've done it 3 times, which is fine.
Yeah.
Now do the one at the bottom. Now expand the one at the bottom.
Yeah. Hold on. I'll just get rid of those and tidy up.
Yeah. No, you wanted the.
One of the last one. One of the last one, not the first one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now what you do? Now delete the first 2. Delete the first 2.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Delete those 2.
Okay. We're doing very well here.
Select the key takeaway. Select all of those notes.
Yeah.
And then Now if you drag those up underneath turnball.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what that's going to do is those notes are going to now place them in there. Those notes are now going to take on the on add function.
Whoops. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. Go on, Michael. Have you lost Michael?
Michael, well, I'll fill in while it's going. So
yeah,
the thing is, you don't need the exploded notes now. The
That's
point
right.
of that is,
yeah, I have done this longhand, but
right.
yeah.
And the thing about exploded notes is if you're doing this a lot, you can, for instance, set up that it actually uses a prototype using exploded notes deliberately, capital E, capital N, so that it's a different note. So that you can do all sorts of funky, basically, because the new notes are added to the exploded notes container, and you can do stuff to it. You can add all sorts of on-add stuff, so all sorts of extra work you want to do.
Yeah.
So suddenly you can, once you've worked out what you want to do, and don't feel compelled to do it from the get-go. The worst thing you can do is feel, I've got to decide everything I might need, and I've got to get it right now. The joy of Tinderbox is you can just come back and do this. If you need a few extra things, you can use a stamp code to update the old ones, and then anything going forward, use the new ones. But effectively, what you now have is you've just gone through a routine that you can do as many times as you like. You can do this for all your references, and you can begin to split out these notes.
Well, I would be able to do that if I could remember what on earth it was we just did.
Well, that's why
Malcolm,
that's why we record it too.
What we just did is you selected a note, you went to the notes menu, you opened explode, you customized the explode dialog, which by default just says, I'm going to take every paragraph and make it into a note. So because you have a custom delimiter which tells Tinderbox, no, I want you to use this thing as a delimiter, and you either delete that or not as you require, and then Tinderbox will use that to make you as many notes as you want. And it's worth looking, when you do it the first time, look at the bottom of that little dialogue, and you may have seen it's one of 7 notes. Yeah. So it's saying, I think based on what you have told me, that I'm going to make 7 notes off this. If it says I'm going to make 24 or 9 or something, and that doesn't look right, then it probably means that you've either set up the dialogue wrong, or you have inadvertently put something into the text of your note that is confusing the delimiter. But it's extremely powerful. It's not something everyone needs all the time, but when you might need explode, it's a really, really powerful and wonderful way of ingesting information and getting the right stuff split up in the right granularity that you want.
Yeah, and let me emphasize this, Malcolm, if you don't mind. If you go click on like Roll of Quaker Faith, that note right there.
But you know what I'm writing better than I do.
It says right there, Roll of Quaker Faith, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And if go reset the attributes, because the exploded notes they took on inherited notes, so just do that reset button.
Yeah.
Okay. Click on that.
And reset. Yeah. I clicked it. Yeah.
It doesn't look like it took on the P prototype, the P note prototype.
Hold on, let me just get back to map view. Was that a mistake? Turnbull, here we go.
Yeah, you don't need to go to. Why'd you go to map view though? Just out of curiosity.
Why? Because I thought I was going to see more characteristics by going into map, and probably because that's what I'm most familiar working in.
Yeah, but you don't need to. So if you were to
I'll go back to outline then.
Right.
There we go.
If you see that little rectangle in front of the Roll of Quaker Faith.
Yep, I do.
If you double tap on that, that will pop up your attributes list, your prototype list too.
Yep.
And what prototype is that assigned to?
None. It's on none.
Okay, so so what that's saying, something's wrong with your on add. You probably had a typo,
right?
Because it didn't add the P note prototype.
That's correct. Yes.
Right, and so if you but for now, if you just right mouse click on that.
Yep.
And click the P note prototype.
Now, did it actually appear? Oh, yes, it did. P notes.
Yeah. Okay. Now you'll see if you would, and this is kind of the debugging thing, right?
Yeah.
I was expecting to see those attributes displayed because that's what your P note prototype had.
Yeah.
But they weren't displayed. So what that's telling me is you've probably got a typo in your on add where you mistype prototype or you mistype P note.
So can we get to the on add?
Sure. So if you go back to the Turnball
Yep.
and click Command 1, go to the Death Star, click the action.
That's
No,
one
hold
action.
on. But
No,
that
that
doesn't. No,
no, because
can you
it's Turnball.
explode?
The
You
Turnball
want to get
note's not.
exploded notes.
No, the Turnball note's not selected.
Oh, you're right.
There you
Yep.
go. All right, and prototype equals.
P note. Oh, it's in singular. It should be P notes. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how you typed it. Whatever
Right.
the name of that note is.
Let's have a look. Mhm.
See, and this is where a convention gets really
Yeah.
useful. Like for me, I never put plurals in my prototype names
Yeah.
for any reason.
Yeah, I put it as a plural. So if I change this to singular.
Well, yeah, but then you're going to have to go and apply that note to, you know.
Okay.
But,
Right.
or yeah, go ahead and change it to singular if you want, or change your prototype. It's up to you as to how you want it to work.
Okay, so I've changed that to P note.
And then
Now
go
I
back to
can
the
go back
Turnball note and go back to the
Turnball,
on
right.
add.
Right.
Okay. So now anytime you add a new note to that note, you'll be able to do this. If you go back to the since you're in map view, go ahead and double click into that container. And now if you just click anywhere to create yourself a new note.
All right. Yep.
See that
P-note.
that on add now has worked even in the map view as well.
Yep. I can see P note there in the prototype.
Right. And you also see it's now displayed those attributes, and you'll see it's immediately inherited.
Yeah.
Because you had the publication year equals parent, it's that note is taken on the parent's year of 2004.
Yeah.
So part of the reason why I do these kind of explodes. So we were just talking to Lou Friedland about this on Friday during my Patreon session. He said one of my biggest challenges I have with Tinderbox is I collect all these notes, and then I have a hard time discovering my insight, my research, what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I find exploding my notes. So I try to have as each note, it goes back to like Luhmann's concepts too of Zettelkasten, right? I try to have the text of a note be as have parsimonious as possible.
Yeah.
That this note is about this.
Yeah.
And if I find a note having multiple concepts into it, I'll explode them. I'll have them inherit the relationship of the parent, the citation key, the author name, the year, and then core tags. So later, then I can run agents that would say, go find me every note that's related to Turnball that's published in this particular year and has that term.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually allows you to start doing more discovery research in Tinderbox, because then you can start getting better use of find and agents and that kind of capability by splitting your notes out.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I'm embarrassed to see how much of everybody's time I've taken up.
No, that's what this is for. I mean, we're all learning. Right. And invariably, if it's not your question, somebody else is going to have that question, or someone watching this video a year from now, we're going to get, oh, thank God Malcolm brought that up, because now I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So another useful thing to bring out here is that, so you recall you did an explode and then you promoted all the notes. So if you were to do that explode again, you'd find when they explode, they wouldn't have the notes prototype. And the reason is that they got that because, well, in this case, you set it, but they actually got it when you promoted them out of the exploded notes container into the parent. So you could, if you wanted, if you always used explode for this purpose, you could set the on add of the exploded notes prototype, which is applied to the small e, small n exploded prototypes container that is always created as a result of an explode, to say, right, if you make an explode, make all the children of type P notes. So there is, again, there's much scope for customization. Don't need to do it all this second, but just understand that that's the broad interrelation. So in other words, you don't have to do explode and then promote all the children. You don't have to. You can, and you'll get to that same point.
Well, here's another example too, Malcolm. In the screen, hit Command 1. Oh, excuse me, real quick. Go to explode note. Go to view explode note. Sorry, close that. Go to explode note.
Okay, view explode
No,
is
go to note. Sorry, note. Go to the
Yeah.
note menu, hit explode note.
yeah. Oh, where has it gone? Explode. Yep.
Okay. And you see, because we're in the same session still, it's maintain your delimiter because it thinks you're going to
Yes.
keep do that. Where it says action in the bottom, this
Yep.
time type in there, type $ prototype equals quote P note. End quote. No, prototype equals, yeah, and then in quotes, P
Oh, I
note,
see. Yeah.
and then quote.
Take the quote off the end.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
No, you don't want to. You don't want. No, the reason you don't want a dollar on the right is you're saying on the left. You're saying set the value of the attribute called prototype, and on the right, it's going to say give it a name. So you want to delete the $ after the equals.
Yep.
And it will work without that, but the general presumption is you put double quotes around it, saying no, look, this is, I literally want you to take everything inside the quotes as a literal value. So, so you're saying, so set the value of attribute prototype to be P notes, which tells
No. Don't click explode
I'm
yet.
not going to do it. Okay.
Yeah, put quotes around P note.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, and then for fun, type semicolon and say dollar color equals
Okay.
capital C equals quote yellow. Close quote, semicolon. So what you can do is when you're running action code, you string action code commands together using the semicolon. So what you're telling Tinderbox is first assign the prototype to each exploded note, then change that note's color to yellow. Okay. And so now go ahead and hit explode. Okay. Now double click into the container. And now you see you've got a new note called exploded notes, and they're all yellow. And they've all adopted the new prototype of P note.
Oh, yeah. Good. Well, I've got 70% of that. I look forward to watching the video.
Right. But, so in other words, hopefully what we've learned from this is, as we talked about earlier, what Tinderbox does is Tinderbox has its defaults. Other applications have their defaults. In this artisanal family of software, all of this is imminently personalizable based on how we want to use these tools for ourselves, and the standards and the methods and the terminologies and that we've developed for our own workflows. And then over time, those workflows, those methods become muscle memory for us, and for many, they might become the standard for the community if it happens to be something that's been picked up as being a pretty good idea. And then that's how we keep moving forward with making this kind of stuff work.
That's good. And Mr. Turnbull will be delighted to see his work so prominent.
Okay. Yeah, and then later, and we don't need to do this today, obviously, because we only have 13 minutes left. But later, the next step after this kind of like collection stage, because really what we've been talking about thus far is collection and some like basic curation, tagging, and making sure the notes have their publication year and all that, which would then later help us with as part of the curation stage, ongoing and future discovery of these other notes. The next stage would be for you to start and presumably like these paragraphs are your own text. This is your thinking that you've put behind what these what you've learned about this Quaker
I think in that case,
right. Okay, and so that's your own unique creation. And so you can start, now realizing, okay, I now know the distinction between what Turnbull actually said, because I've cited that note, versus my own writings and my own inspiration from that. Okay. And then, and that's kind of where it seems most people with Tinderbox stop. They get into Tinderbox and they collect some notes, they do some curation of some notes, and they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to stop there. And now I'm going to pop over to Mello or Word or Scrivener to do my writing.
Yep.
Right. But maybe one of the next things you can challenge yourself with when you get some time is to start learning a little bit more about Tinderbox templating, because you can actually, I've been able to do everything that Scrivener does in Tinderbox. I don't need Scrivener anymore because I can manage. I've written an entire 200-page presentation and 400-page book, everything in Tinderbox because of the use of the templates. Now that's the way I've chosen to use the tool. I try to get as much of my information in one place. So I'm trying to do as much as I possibly can all in one place, aka Tinderbox, and then only go to the edge case tools when I need to share or do something with somebody else. But that's the power of Tinderbox, is then with the templating capabilities, you have that whole next layer of capability that we can explore in the future.
Yep. Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, this is fun. Thanks for the exercise and going through it.
Good. Thank you very much for your help.
Yeah. Anybody else have any other thoughts, comments, questions about all of that? Yeah, Paul, go for it.
So, I'll explain this anecdotally because I can't share it on the screen for a reason I'll explain. But this week, I had a problem that I came to my mind after thinking about it for 5 minutes that only Tinderbox can solve. I had a nonprofit board and for the first time got a complaint about one of the executives. So all I had with about 30 minutes to prepare for a Zoom meeting was 10 emails, a set of reference bylaw documents, and I had to go to a meeting and document what had happened. Pulled up Tinderbox, dragged all the emails onto an outline, dragged the bylaws, started to use the hyperbolic view, which I'm not real conversant with, to draw links and label the links as complainant, complaint, relevant text, etc. And it's not going to surprise you, but it surprised me. Within about 30 minutes, I had everything I needed to walk into a meeting, intelligently refer to it, throw up a shared screen that documented everything that had to happen, and we came to a resolution. Again, I can't share it on the screen, but it was one of those aha moments that said, boy, this is the tool that's jumpstarting my life.
Well, and not only that, Paul, I had something similar myself in the past with that. And going back to that last retort I was just saying too, is if you then needed to document that meeting, you could then actually use the Tinderbox templating tools to document that and publish that and give people the record.
Yeah.
Here's the record of all of the information with the appropriate sources and the dates and the timing and who was in the meeting and not and all of that.
Yeah. Excellent.
I've got something for occasioned by a thread that's ongoing in the moment. Someone who's just starting, and there's a classic thing of, well, I haven't used that view and I don't understand what it does. Something we could use as a filler, if we find ourselves without problems at hand, is to actually just go back to some of the views and plod through. I remind myself, because I tend to document things, just how many sort of wonderful little corners there are, and I suspect everyone watching could, we could do something in the map view and say, I didn't know it did that, or I didn't know that Outline did that. So in other words, even the views that we're used to using, there are so many wonderful little rich bits in the corner that often arose because a particular person had a particular problem, but they live on, and they're always a wonder when you find them and you think, oh gosh, why haven't we used this before? So I just park that as a thought, and also especially I think attribute view is one that is worth people learning about early. It's difficult to say that if you opened a document and had like a tab for every view, it would be overkill. And my thought is not that, but I think one of the reasons people get into this thing where say I've now built an agent for everything I want to know, and I have too many agents, is that screams at saying have a look in attribute browser, because really what you're trying to say is for this attribute, what are all the discrete what are all the notes using that value? And that is exactly, in a nutshell, it does other things as well, but attribute browser does that really, really well.
I once said
maybe we could have that as a put that on the side for if we have a fallow meeting, to walk through that. It's blindingly obvious after the fact. It's just until you see it, you wouldn't understand it.
I was the said person that introduced that, and
What
it
is
was
that?
really helpful to have that feedback. And in fact, it related to something also that you were looking at in the previous meeting. This is my first meeting, but where it was trying to understand what code was changing a value that went to 93 or something when it should have been a 1 or 2. And it occurred to me as I then started to look at the attribute, because I thought, oh, I could write an agent that did that looked for anything that was on ad that was non-blank and there was blah blah blah. And the attribute view, when I started looking at it, gave me exactly that without messing about with.
I think the nice thing about the attribute view is that you're absolutely right, and I'm sorry, I should draw on the association, but I hasten to add that what you've raised is a sort of consistent thing when people start, because there is an awful lot of richness, and it's an awful lot to engage with at first sight, but it's this thing that you think it's easy when you're starting and you've got 10 or 15 notes. All right, I'll make an agent to find that, and then think, well, I'll hang on to that agent. I might need it again, so I'll make another agent, and now you've got you've now got 20 agents, and essentially they're more often than not they're just saying what has the value this. And what attribute browser essentially in its barest form says, for you choose either, well, by default the whole document, or you might say just as part of the overall document, for attribute X, show me effectively the discrete values within it. And you can do other things, and you can effectively have a grid-like view, because you can show multiple attributes for each note displayed, and you can finesse that. But it's basic level. You can say, oh right, so for attribute X, I'm using 5 discrete values, and where it's remarkably useful. I use it a lot in sort of essentially doing quantitative humanities type work, where effectively I'm keywording stuff. So you go through and you look at all the categories, you can turn on a count for them. And one of the things is looking at all the really low counts, and you're thinking, well, wait a minute, is this value I've chosen really a discrete value, or is it actually a subset of something? So you just squeeze out all those edge cases. So that's a really nice way in which attribute browser can save you an absolute ton of work, because you can just go through, you can scroll down through this. Oh, right, what are all the things that got 2 or 3 entries? Well, do they really need to be different? And it doesn't matter. It can cope with multi-value things as well. So if something is a list or set value, that a note can turn up under each category for which it has a value, if that makes sense. So if you're taking a so-called string attribute, each attribute can only have 1 value, but a set or a list can have 3 or 4 values, or many values. So if you're looking at a list attribute in attribute browser, a note that has 3 values will show up under 3 categories, because that's the whole point of the categorized list. You just see where that note has an entry, but it's remarkably powerful. But again, we just had a really nice example of how you might use hyperbolic view. Hyperbolic view works off links. So it only shows what's linked between notes, and it really begins to give a new purpose to link types as being more than just labels on a map. We tend to use that. You draw a line on a map, oh, give it a label. This link is different to that one. But that's a bit like using OmniGraffle or Visio or something. But if you go back to the sort of underlying hypertextual element of it all, so no, I'm linking from this note to this note because I'm implying this link has this purpose.
Yeah.
A hyperbolic view then allows you to do. You can show all the different links, but you might say, look, I want to look at the document, but I just want to see where this. Effectively, I want to see where this line of argument goes. And that's the joy it gives you.
I think that relates to something at a slightly more abstract level, which I kind of got at a bit on the forum. I used to have one of the teams that worked for me wrote proposals, and they used Word for that in the main. and Word is very rich. But if you and you can read the Word manual, read the manual for Word, and that tells you how Word works, a very syntactical kind of way. But then knowing how to work it is a distinction that we tried to get across very early on to people in that team, because you can easily use Word like a typewriter, but if you use it in a sophisticated way that Word enables, then it can do very powerful things and actually ultimately make your documents look more elegant, but you're more efficient and effective at producing them as well. And I also raised the idea that, pointed out the notion of Pythonic, where in Python there's you can read the Python manual, but that's not the same as knowing how to write Python. And they have a word for it, Pythonic. And I'm tempted to try and head towards a Tinderboxic type way. It's all very well reading how Tinderbox works, and there's a lot of sophistication under the hood. But then how to work it, like we've just been talking about, you've given an example of how to work attribute view, you give an example of how to work hyperbolic view, but it starts to say, oh, so you need to think about how you label your links. You need to think about how you use your attribute. And it's that, it's hopefully a spiral of understanding how it works, understanding how to work it, understanding a bit more how it works, and a bit more how to work it with and growing in that way. And I think that is happening for me. And I as a historical thing, I only started on a Mac and Tinderbox about 18 months ago. Before that, I've got 40 plus years of, or whenever the PCs came out, I helped introduce them into the UK. And so I've got all this kind of Windows stuff that comes with me, and expectations, and learning something new in the Mac, learning something new in something like Tinderbox is massive for me at the moment. But I do come from a place where I'm kind of realizing that I'm playing with Tinderbox, and I'm learning how it works, and I'm learning how to work it before I go into what will be a big commitment on the project that I plan to use it for. But I don't want to go down the route of having dozens of sort of the equivalent of Word documents that are all done as if they were on a typewriter. So I'm playing around, not just with Tinderbox, but with some of the things that go. I'm doing a lot of my stuff is actually not text, but is video and audio as well. So I'm playing around with things that can, on a Mac, that can play around with video and audio as well. But so it's start to work for me.
So Chris, it's funny you say that. It makes me think too on how as adults we often forget the importance of play.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That through play we actually learn, and through experimentation we actually learn. And somehow as adults we've forgotten that important part of like exploratory play.
Very much, yeah.
Really,
but the other thing I do besides the project that I'm working on, I work with children that have got neurological injuries that stop them moving as well as they might. And the importance of play there is it's really quite sophisticated, because you play with a child. Partly you're playing to help them feel safe, and partly you're helping them play to develop. And there's a kind of an interplay between playing and developing, or safety and development, sorry, in play. That you play, but creating a safe environment so the child's not scared, but then they're willing to play some more, and then you can develop a bit more, and so on. It's a kind of a ladder type thing. Yeah, I think play's really a very important way of discovering. And yeah. But it's safety. So I'm doing a lot of saves of Tinderbox files at the moment. Safety is important as well as development. So
yeah, and again, the other thing I've learned in this process too is, and it comes down to map view and outline view, in that I think some of us get scared about putting too much into a Tinderbox file because it gets overwhelming and there's so many notes. But again, I think Mr. Anderson and I are pushing the edge on this quite a bit. But I've got a handful of Tinderbox files that have well over 10,000 notes. You know, I've got one Tinderbox file that has three drafts of 3 different books. You know, each of which are accumulating 300 or 400 pages when it will all said and be done. And then each of those are then referencing off a bunch of atomic notes of terminology and places and people and other relationships that cross-pollinate across all of those. So you can actually develop really extensive and complex workflow and work product in a Tinderbox file. It just really comes down to what, you know, your methodology and what and how it gets comfortable for you.
Yeah, I mean, for my sins, I was also the one that asked about the workspaces and the thread there. And one of the things I mean, Mark will know this probably best of all of us, but I'm fortunate. I've got a fairly modern Mac. It's an M1 Max with loads of storage inside the Mac and loads of memory. I just haven't. It's virtually instantaneous, and I've imported a few thousand just to see what it was like to play around with, not because they were anything particularly important. I've just not experienced a problem at all. I've not. I don't even feel like I'm close to the edge with what I can do, which is good because I would expect to have.
It's always a difficult thing when explained to people. I mean, there are no. I mean, essentially, with anything, if you throw enough stuff at it, you may find there are limits. You know, you run out of RAM, you run out of CPU, or whatever. But Tinderbox is not trying to be an Oracle database. No, it's not designed for that scale. It's a desktop thing. But that actually, well, as Michael's alluded to, you can actually build really quite large documents.
Well, and again, depending. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and one of the things you will see a strand of it running through the forum that if and when, and it may never be for some people, it may never be, but if and when you reach the point where you're doing sufficient amount of work in your document that you sort of sense it's you know, stiffing up a bit, it's often just because actually you've got lots and lots of agents running that were fine in a 20-note document, not so good in a 200,000 note document. But there are ways to back that off. That's very, very manageable.
Well, and again, the beautiful thing with Tinderbox is when you hit that point, you can manage it, right? You can start backing it off in that file and incrementally make the adjustments you need to make. So, for example, one of my files, I noticed the other day, I have 8,000 individual rules, 7,000 edicts, and about 40 agents. And what I've learned to do is to Booleanize all of them. So they're all just doing yes or no. And if it's yes, then process the sublines. If no, then just skip to the next one. And those sublines within some of those rules have 20 or 30 different commands. And so if you did 30 commands by 7,000 edicts and they're all running all the time, all simultaneously, that bogs down an M2 machine. But if you have 6,500 binary yes or no's with only 500 running those 30 lines of code, it's nothing. And there's Boolean strategies around to make that work.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, I'm looking to Tinderbox I'm not particularly looking to output documents. I'm looking to Tinderbox to help me think and to develop my thinking so that I can then apply that to the children I work with or the adults I work with in a different sphere. And I think that so a lot of it will be about exploring with the kind of exploration that we just talked about with the hyperbolic view, with the attribute thing, to try and find connections that I'm
Yeah.
not discovering. And that's the piece that's really important for me.
And,
And it's
and,
already
and,
started to happen a little bit.
Chris, I think that another thing that comes to mind, and we should probably wrap up because my daughter's sitting on the beach and probably wants me to get down there, bring the towels, is keep this in mind too. Tinderbox has its views. It has timeline and tree map and hyperbolic and all of that. If you have a view that that Tinderbox is not providing you, over the summer, Mark launched the new I'm mind blanking out right now. What's the
Table.
Not table, well, the new table one, but the whole I can't believe I'm mind blanking on posters. Yeah, so you can a whole new functionality of posters where you've got a whole world of free JavaScript libraries that will render information in any way, shape, or form you want. So you can actually pull in JavaScript libraries using posters and have Tinderbox render that. And then if that doesn't work, just write your own template. So quite often I'll write a template to have Tinderbox render the information exactly the way I want it rendered, whether or not I'm intending to publish it out or not. It's just so I can explore my data in a different way. Because in that regard, while Tinderbox is not a web browser, it is a textual web rendering engine. And with that in mind, by the way, since you commented you're working with video and images and other audio type files, look back at some of my videos where I talk about how you can you archive the hard file onto your hard drive, the image, the audio file, or video, and you can pull those up and then have the visuals rendered in Tinderbox, just like you would a web browser. It's not going to be as pretty and complex as say Google Chrome or Opera, but you don't want that. What you're really trying to do is you're not looking for pretty, you're looking for, am I understanding this information? Pretty can be done on other places. And honestly, if you get templates done well enough, you can output super pretty work into some other tool to do final refinement. So really, really powerful. All right. And with that in mind, let's call it a wrap and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. And Malcolm, thanks for letting us put you on the spot today. That was fun.
Yes, Malcolm. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.